2019-19, a proposal for special resolution to reduce carbon emissions, increase energy efficiency and renewable energy use to create a climate change resilient city of Goshen that will protect the future members of our community.
I move for the passage of resolution 2019-19.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman King. This resolution is kind of a special resolution this evening, one that I'm actually very proud of. 3 years ago, first year as mayor, we instituted the youth advisor position in the city of Goshen. Felix here is the third youth advisor we've had on the city council. So he worked with the Youth Caucus that he really helped to build this year. And it's the Youth Caucus and Youth Advisor that are bringing us this resolution. And I believe this is the first time in the history of Goshen that the youth have brought something to the council for passage. I would like to remind everybody that this, there's been some newspaper articles that were written off of a speech I gave in Indianapolis at the IU Law Summit, Environmental Law Summit. And I was misquoted in a Southern Indiana paper. Local papers picked up on that. So I want to be clear, we are not talking about a resolution that creates mandates on the community of Goshen. This resolution speaks to the city of Goshen, city government. We are going to work really hard to better all we're doing and lead by example. And in government terms, when we say city of Goshen, we're actually talking about city government. When we say community of Goshen, we're talking about all the businesses, all the residents, and city government. So I just want to make sure there's been some confusion about what this is, but this is speaking to city government. And it's resolutions are non-binding, like this one are non-binding, but they're great statements by our community. And yeah, I'm just really proud. I'm going to turn it over now to Felix, and the Youth Caucus will be giving a presentation.
My name is Felix Presdiner, Youth Advisor to the City Council of Goshen, Indiana, and I'm proud to present today our environmental resolution. The Youth Caucus was started by my predecessor, Jason Barahona, and we started discussion on this resolution last year. Many youth-led environmental resolutions have already been passed throughout the state of Indiana, including Indianapolis, Carmel, Lawrence, and most recently, just yesterday, South Bend. One of my goals this year was to grow the caucus and follow through with this resolution. This year we've done that, and I'm excited to present this to the council. Our group has met once or twice a month to work on this resolution, and the resolution we present is the result of months of hard work. Excellent. Is it working?
It should. Right.
It wasn't on.
I don't know if you even have it on.
All right. So, this resolution is a public statement that the City of Goshen will take more initiative to make the environment of the city greener and encourage wider community involvement in improving the quality of life for all individuals in regards to a clean and inviting city. This resolution doesn't provide specifics about things we want to change in Goshen, nor is it binding since it is not an ordinance. However, we consider this resolution to be a critical first step in the right direction. This resolution is a push to get us on the right track. Several of my peers from the caucus are here to present this resolution as well, and I would like to invite Jonathan Snyder, President of the Youth Caucus, to talk about climate change.
I'm Jonathan Snyder, resident of Goshen, President of the Youth Caucus. So one of the key things when talking about climate change is to actually know what we're talking about. And so to do that, we want to first provide some evidence just so that we're all working with the same information and same understandings as we discuss this. So the first thing for the climate to be changing is that the Earth is warming. And global warming is something that there is contention over, but there's not really any evidence that suggests the Earth is not warming. The American Meteorological Society, among other organizations, have taken measurements from around the world, and I quote here that terrestrial and oceanic measurements demonstrate a 0.5 degrees Celsius rise in temperature globally from 1979 to 2010. And so that's a pretty common number that we see because that's what the measurements indicate. And so the Earth is warming. That's hard to dispute. But where climate change, where contention comes into this debate is often over whether or not humans are causing this change. And so one of the things that gets thrown around a lot is discussion of CO2. And one of the properties of CO2 is that it traps radiation from the sun. And so that's just a scientific property of CO2. So regardless of whether or not the amount we produce is significant, CO2 does cause the Earth to rot. But with that said, we're here today, and one of the things we believe is that the amount of CO2 we as a society, as humans, are producing is significant enough to cause global warming. And so one of the reasons that we think that is that in the natural cycle of CO2, which is basically the CO2 that moves between the ocean and the atmosphere and the ground, there's about 750 gigatons of CO2 globally. And based on measurements from factories and automobiles and all these CO2 that we as people produce, the total comes to about 29 gigatons of CO2. And so 29 compared to 750 doesn't seem very significant, but when you come to understand the carbon cycle a bit more, that 29 actually is quite significant because the Earth is relatively balanced when it produces CO2 naturally through a variety of different processes, but without our contribution, it stays in a relatively good balance. When we factor in that 29 gigatons, that significantly shifts that balance out of whack, and so then there ends up being a lot more CO2 in the air, which, as we know, causes warming. And so this is a graph of the amount of CO2 in parts per million in our atmosphere over the past 400,000 years. And those measurements are taken from different sources, such as drilling into ice and examining how much CO2 is in that, because ice at the polar caps stays frozen for hundreds of thousands of years, which is where we get this. And so, well, as you can see here, there's kind of a cyclic nature to the graph as it spikes up and down, but then at the right side of the graph, there's a massive spike. And so it's tempting to argue sometimes that the CO2 we see, or the rise in temperature, is just naturally part of the Earth cycle, but really that doesn't fit the data because there's such a significant spike beyond anything that has occurred naturally before, and it's happened so rapidly that on a natural time scale, this just wouldn't happen. And so the line, the horizontal line there, is at 300 parts per million, and that represents basically the maximum natural threshold that Earth has been at for the past 400,000 years. And our current level is approaching 400 parts per million. So that's a pretty significant increase over what we would see naturally if there had been no contributions by humans. And so our argument isn't very complicated for why humans are causing it. Basically, we just say humans produce a lot of CO2, and that CO2 causes the Earth to warm. So therefore, humans are contributing to global warming. And so this graph kind of demonstrates the average temperature and what it would be with no human influence. So that line, the blue line, comes from taking measurements without factoring in the 29 gigatons of CO2 that we produce. And the red line, with human influence, factors in that carbon tonnage to get to come up with a theoretical value for the actual temperature of the Earth. And then the dashed gray line represents the actual measured values. As you can see, this is only up to 2000, so this isn't theoretical, this is what we've actually measured. But you can see that it pretty closely fits the line of what would happen, what's expected to happen with human influence. And so based on that, we conclude that climate change is being caused by humans, and therefore it's our obligation to do something about it. And so with that, I'll invite Sophia Sherrill up to discuss some of the impacts of climate change.
I'm Sophia Sherrill. I'm Secretary of the Youth Caucus, and I'm here to discuss some of the things that Jonathan mentioned and how that impacts not only the world at large, but also just our community. That's not it. Oh, I got it. Okay. So, this is just a quote to say, first of all, in the first part of it, that all across the weather spectrum and the weather cycle and all of these kinds of things, clearly that there is some increase in these events and these weather patterns, and that these kind of things affect the economy, the government and service jobs, and overall health and well-being of the people. So there's been recorded connections by people that this is affecting things all across a spectrum of everything. So a couple of specific things that the American Lung Association has stated that millions of people are experiencing health complications with lung, respiratory, and heart conditions because of the increasing temperatures or pollen or that kind of thing. And specifically with the pollen, that people with allergies suffer more, typically because with warming temperatures, there is more pollen in the air because spring is coming quicker in some sort of sense, or like the plants seem to think so, and there are those kind of things that are happening. With the Department of Quadrennial Defense, basically they, in the future, don't see how they can plan for a lot of these missions or operations because of the different climate things that are occurring or different events. They don't know what to plan for, so they don't feel more as secure in their plans as they would like to because they don't know what to foresee. And with the National Academy of Sciences, the main thing I want to emphasize here is the emphasis on the altering of the ecosystems. A lot of ecosystems, not only in this country but around the world, are very, very fragile. And any shift above with the predators or with any of the algae or bottom feeders, there can be catastrophic, like things that happen when any of that is shifted or altered. And that can lead right up to humans very, very quickly, and that is very, very dangerous to hear that any kind of ecosystem could be changed in some sort of way. Now, with the FEMA declared disasters, FEMA is Federal Emergency Management Agency, and they respond to natural disasters. Now, there's a clear increase and spikes in activity as the years have gone on, and whether you believe that this is due to climate change or not, there is definitely something that is happening, and an increase in disasters due to these people. I believe that they're due to increasing temperatures and fluctuating weather. A lot of these disasters become disasters because the town that it occurred in was not prepared for the magnitude of the disaster. What would have been something that may have been a normal flood or a normal hurricane or a regular tornado turned into something much more monstrous because of these different weather changes. Now, connecting this to Goshen with the Elkhart River. The largest crest ever was February of last year. Now, if you know Indiana, in February, usually it is cold. However, during this time last year, it was weirdly warm due to these fluctuating temperatures that are becoming more and more common as these climate change things keep happening. So normally, in years past, here in February in Indiana, what normally probably would have been a bad blizzard with snow because it would have been cold, because it was warm, it turned into massive snow melt and massive rain, turning into this ecological mess that required a massive amount of cleanup. And that affected the economy of Goshen, affected the ways of life of people, it destroyed several businesses. There was a lot of things that went wrong. So whether you believe that this has to do with specifically climate change or just simply fluctuating weather, it is clear that something sudden happened that the town was not prepared for, and that was not good. Now, Dylan will come up and talk about the benefits of taking action due to these things.
Hi, my name is Dylan Sturry. I've lived in Goshen all of my life, and I will be talking about benefits of taking action. So, there are various economic benefits that come with switching to green energy and more sustainable methods of producing energy. So, for example, it creates jobs in manufacturing and installation, which, as mentioned before, we're looking for ways to diversify our job population in Goshen and the surrounding counties, or the surrounding communities. So that would be a great way to do that with manufacturing, installing solar panels, wind turbines, stuff like that. Also, energy produced by these sustainable sources costs less to produce than the carbon-based ones. So coal power approximately costs $45 per megawatt hour. Natural gas costs $42 to $78 per megawatt hour, whereas solar costs $34 per megawatt hour, and wind costs $30 per megawatt hour. And on this graph right here, this is a graph from Forbes, and they track the prices of each form of energy and what it would cost. And right down at the bottom corner, that is wind and solar, down below all the other types of productions of energy. So along with economic benefits, there are also numerous health benefits that come with switching to sustainable forms of producing energy and various other things. So first of all, as we know, it'd be reduced greenhouse gas emissions, which then in turn reduces the types of air pollution. So it betters the air quality, reducing chances for respiratory diseases such as asthma, and reducing symptoms for those who already have it. As Sophia said, since it will be warmer, there's more pollen production, thus increasing the chance for these allergies to happen and disease attack them. And then up there in the corner is just a diagram stating all the things that health changes that could come with climate change and why we should stay away from emissions that create pollution. Now Simon will come talk about increasing the tree canopy.
Hello, I am Simon Hertzler-Gasho, a resident of Goshen. We live, work, and play in Goshen every day, a city which is positively affected by the presence of trees. As the climate continues to warm, which we've seen evidence for, the healthy, vibrant urban forest will be an important part of Goshen's social and physical infrastructure. Our ecosystem relies on trees, which stabilize fragile parts of our environment, including the health of humans. This being said, our goal is to reach an urban tree canopy of 45% by 2045. This would double the estimated number of trees in Goshen from around 32,000 to approximately 78,000. Not only do trees provide aesthetic value, they are also important for the city's ecosystem, including stormwater management systems, recreational systems, filtering pollutants, and capturing carbon. Educating ourselves about the tree canopy is one of the best ways we can protect the future of Goshen. Our goal will be achieved through a combined effort of neighborhood level planning, the city's departments, community partnerships, and volunteers who will all set the foundation to successfully meet our goal. In addition, nonprofit groups like Trees for Goshen will play an important part in carrying out planting goals on the neighborhood level. Increasing Goshen's total urban tree canopy is one of the best ways we can protect the future of Goshen, as well as undoubtedly make Goshen a more happy and healthy place to live. Thank you. I'll now give it back to Felix.
And to close, we'll look at what our resolution aims to achieve. We want to work to have carbon neutrality in Goshen by 2035 and the 45% tree canopy goal that Simon just talked about by 2045. We want the city of Goshen to support where possible initiatives in Goshen and Elkhart County to reduce carbon footprint. Some of these may include waste reduction, recycling, and alternate transportation methods, just to name a few. And now that we have our goals defined, the next critical step is to make a plan. This resolution is vague and unspecific, but we call for a climate action plan that will find specifics and put them into place to achieve our goals. The mayor is already looking to the possibility of an Office of Sustainability to consolidate a few city functions and to combine them with the planning process into one office, and I hope the council will support this proposition. We want to engage various community leaders, both from the business and neighborhood community, to ensure no one is left out of the planning process. Much of what will happen next is determined by the assessments that the city of Goshen goes through. The IU extern greenhouse gas assessment will provide a baseline assessment of how big Goshen's carbon footprint is, and the GLESA stormwater assessment will look at how stormwater moves through the city of Goshen and how best to respond to another flood situation. The Mayor's Environmental Council is a group that is already meeting monthly to look at everything that the city of Goshen does and to begin looking at improvements that can be done in Goshen. This resolution is important to us as youth, and I urge the council to support this resolution to make the city of Goshen a cleaner, greener, and happier place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Youth Advisor Perez.